What if last night's devastation in Lviv was not simply another strike, but a dire message? One that could upend Europe's fragile balance and unravel decades of hard-won stability. Imagine for a moment that beneath the surface of these events, a far deeper game is being played, one whose consequences may echo for generations. In the space of a single night, the city of Lviv endured more than 50 missiles and hundreds of drones, all unleashed with unnerving accuracy. These were not stray shots fired in panic. Instead, precision attacks uncovered deeply buried command centers and secret weapon stockpiles, locations long thought invulnerable, even by seasoned military analysts. This was an assault meticulously choreographed to shatter illusions of safety and control. Consider the historical parallels. In the Second World War, the surprise of Operation Barbarossa left entire armies scrambling to respond, their assumptions about security and preparedness rendered meaningless overnight. In modern times, the Gulf War's opening airstrikes demonstrated how a few hours of precision bombing could disrupt entire command structures and leave adversaries disoriented. The events in Lviv may well join those moments when the world's tectonic plates suddenly shifted. Yet the aftermath was even more unsettling than the destruction itself. Panic swept through the ranks of foreign mercenaries stationed in Lviv. Some discovered their passports confiscated, while others pleaded desperately for help in shaky videos, realizing too late that they were mere pawns, easily sacrificed in a far larger struggle. The shock and confusion mirrored what happened to foreign fighters during the wars in Syria and Iraq, where many recruits found themselves trapped, abandoned by the very forces that had lured them. Official statements remain conspicuously absent. When those in power say nothing, it often means the truth is too dangerous to reveal. This silence now hangs like a warning, hinting at consequences that could spread well beyond Lviv or Ukraine's borders. Remember the Cuban Missile Crisis. For days, world leaders withheld information, not out of ignorance, but because the reality was too volatile to confront openly. Misunderstand what happened here, and you risk missing the first tremors of upheaval that may soon shake all of Europe, destabilizing economies, threatening security, and changing millions of lives overnight. Why has the ground shifted so suddenly? And whose shadow moves behind the chaos? To grasp the real stakes, we must look beyond the immediate ruins and ask, who benefits from this escalation, and what does it mean for Europe's future? This is the question that haunted every major turning point in the Cold War, and it is the question that matters now. You think you understand this war? You have only seen the surface. The true conflict rages beneath the headlines, deep in shadowed bunkers and secret laboratories, far from the battlefield and out of reach of the world's cameras. When NATO's Operation Allied Force targeted Belgrade's hidden infrastructure, few realized how many secrets lay buried. Lviv's agony is a new chapter in this hidden history. Last night's surgical strikes in Lviv were not routine exchanges. Each missile exposed hidden production facilities, covert command centers, and arms depots, locations so well concealed that only a handful of high-ranking officials were aware they existed. Imagine the shock among those who believed their secrets were safe, only to see them unravel in a matter of minutes. These were not random targets. Every strike landed with surgical intent, splintering the region's invisible control network and shattering the myth of impenetrable fortresses. But the secret war is not just about infrastructure. Deep inside those bunkers, foreign fighters, many from Latin America, are now trapped. Seduced by promises of quick riches and adventure, they awoke to nightmare conditions, passports confiscated, contracts broken, and their lives teetering on the edge. Some record desperate pleas for rescue, their dreams of heroism twisted into fear and betrayal. Their plight is more than a grim statistic. It signals how mercenary recruitment has spiraled into a new form of human trafficking. Think of the French Foreign Legion's darker chapters, or the fates of contractors in Afghanistan, lured by money and abandoned when the missions collapsed. Technology is upending old rules. Advanced drones and missiles, rumored to be unstoppable, strike with uncanny precision. Witnesses report eerie, unfamiliar sounds before impact, evidence that experimental weapons are being unleashed without restraint. No effective defense can stop these systems, and terror spreads among the mercenaries as they realize training means nothing against unseen threats. Modern warfare is no longer about trenches and tanks. It is about invisible enemies and weapons that strike before you even hear them coming. The fallout is chaos. Foreign fighters are fleeing, command structures are unraveling, and the established order is disintegrating in real time. Panic moves faster than any missile, corroding morale and breeding suspicion even among the most seasoned soldiers. To those inside, it feels as if the ground itself is shifting. No one knows who truly holds the reins. This scenario echoes the collapse of South Vietnam, when American advisors and local troops found themselves in a vortex of confusion and betrayal. All clues point to a deeper, hidden game. The West, especially Britain, is not just supporting the conflict. It is orchestrating a vast experiment, turning the region into a laboratory for new strategies, weapons, and psychological warfare. Meanwhile, ordinary people suffer as cities become proving grounds and soldiers are reduced to pawns in an escalating contest of power. This manipulation calls to mind the proxy wars of the 20th century, from Angola to Afghanistan, where local populations paid the price for global ambition. Ignore these layers, and you miss the real stakes. Manipulators operate unseen, testing weapons and propaganda with devastating effects on everyone trapped in the crossfire, from local families to entire European economies. Security, sovereignty, and the stability of future generations all hang in the balance. The world saw similar experiments during the Spanish Civil War, where new tactics and weapons were tested on a population caught in the middle. But the story does not end here. As the chaos deepens, new alliances and betrayals begin to shape the fate of the region. Imagine a chessboard, where every move carries the weight of a nation's destiny, and each sacrifice is measured not in soldiers, but in the futures of entire communities. While the world fixates on open battlefields, the true conflict plays out in the shadows, orchestrated by unseen hands. Throughout history, the real power brokers have often worked in silence. Think of the secret Sykes-Picot Agreement during the First World War, or the clandestine meetings that shaped the fate of Eastern Europe at Yalta. Beneath the shattered skyline of Lviv, a new kind of war unfolds, one that is plotted far from the thunder of missiles. In the aftermath of Brexit, Britain has slipped from the continental fold, wielding its deep-rooted colonial expertise to become the master provocateur and silent coordinator behind the scenes. The fingerprints of British intelligence, especially MI6, are everywhere, identifying targets, directing logistics, and timing assaults that seem engineered to shake the very foundations of the conflict. The echoes of Britain's historical role in the Great Game, manipulating Central Asia's borders, now reverberate across Eastern Europe. This is no longer a matter of mere tactics. Western powers, cloaked in the language of security, use the chaos as a laboratory for testing new weapons and hybrid strategies. Each escalation sends a warning, not only to Russia, but to all of Europe, as age-old power balances are deliberately unsettled. Experimental arms are unleashed, doctrines are rewritten, and the costs are measured not in boardrooms, but in ruined neighborhoods and lives left in fragments. Remember the introduction of tanks at the Battle of the Somme, or the first use of nuclear weapons over Hiroshima, each a leap that changed the rules forever. For those trapped within the conflict zone, the impact is devastating. Local economies crumble as investments vanish and supply lines falter. Schools and hospitals that once anchored these communities now stand abandoned or destroyed, unable to serve the families still clinging to hope. Those fortunate enough to escape join the swelling tide of refugees. Those left behind face a daily struggle for survival, watched by foreign mercenaries and the unblinking eyes of surveillance drones. The aftermath resembles scenes from Aleppo or Sarajevo, where daily life is remade by conflict. Inside this turmoil, the region's elites are divided. Some pursue safety, aligning with Western interests and trading loyalty for influence. Others cling to the hope of national survival, quietly resisting at tremendous personal risk. The region has become less a battlefield and more a proving ground, where the destinies of millions are decided by distant powers. Recall the choices faced by leaders in post-war Eastern Europe, forced to choose between Moscow and the West. If this manipulation goes unchecked, the consequences will ripple far beyond Eastern Europe. New power blocks may redraw borders and rewrite the rules, cementing their dominance as ordinary citizens pay the price: lost homes, broken families, and a future mortgaged for someone else's ambitions. The world witnessed such outcomes after the Sykes-Picot Agreement, when communities found themselves split by arbitrary lines. As the old order fractures and shadow games intensify, the stakes soar, not just for states or armies, but for every nation, and for you. The choices made now will define the world your children inherit. Yet the world's gaze remains fixed on the surface, missing the deeper war raging just out of sight. Behind each headline, the invisible architects of chaos push the crisis toward a point of no return. Remember the run-up to the First World War, when the true causes of conflict were hidden behind diplomatic platitudes and public distractions. What follows threatens not just the fate of one country, but the stability of an entire continent, and perhaps the world order itself. The collapse of Yugoslavia taught us how quickly local violence can engulf a region, with consequences that last for decades. Victory and defeat now stretch beyond the battlefield. Western powers deploy new weapons: economic strangulation, social disruption, and the silent siege of daily life. As precision bombs expose concealed command centers, another offensive unfolds, one aimed at tearing apart the foundations of society, leaving millions vulnerable. The use of sanctions and blockades, from Cuba to Iran, has shown how economic warfare devastates the innocent as much as the intended targets. Behind the scenes, international creditors act with ruthless efficiency. Strategic lifelines, energy grids, railways, fertile farmlands, are quietly swallowed by foreign interests. National treasures, once symbols of sovereignty, become bargaining chips, collateralized to secure war loans. The land itself is transformed into a ledger entry, traded far from the eyes of its people. The privatizations that followed the collapse of the Soviet Union offer a chilling precedent, as oligarchs and foreign companies acquired entire industries for a fraction of their value. This turmoil is no accident. A new military order is being engineered in the shadows. With American resolve now uncertain, Britain and Nato seize the initiative, forging a hardened coalition that seeks to dictate the rules for generations to come. Their power grows, not just on the front lines, but through the architecture of a security system stretching from the Baltic states to the Black Sea. The creation of Nato itself was a response to similar shifts, a coalition born from crisis. Germany, casting off old taboos, races to remilitarize on a scale unseen in decades. European allies pour billions into advanced arsenals, drones, missile shields, autonomous systems, preparing for wars where algorithms may prove as deadly as soldiers. The arms race is not just military, it is economic, technological, and psychological. The European Defense Fund, the largest such initiative since the Cold War, hints at how serious these preparations have become. Yet as elites and foreign powers maneuver for dominance, it is ordinary citizens who suffer most. Factories shutter, jobs vanish, and homes are lost as local industries are sold off or collapse. Families watch savings evaporate, squeezed by soaring prices and shrinking aid. Wealth flows outward, enriching distant financiers and insiders, while the public is abandoned to uncertainty and loss. The economic shocks of Greece's debt crisis or the 2008 financial meltdown offer sobering reminders of how quickly fortunes can change for the many. This is no longer just about shifting borders. It is a struggle for control over the future, over who will rebuild, who will profit, and who will be left behind as ruthless new rules are written in the ashes of old alliances. The Marshall Plan rebuilt Western Europe after the Second World War, but only because the victors chose to invest. Today's plans may not be so generous, but the escalation is not over. New strikes and new forms of pressure are about to redraw the map yet again. The potential for further attacks, cyber or kinetic, hangs over every capital in Europe as governments scramble to shore up defenses. If you believe you are merely a spectator, reconsider. What unfolds in this conflict could shape your own fate sooner than you expect. The ripples from Sarajevo in 1914, or from Lehman Brothers in 2008, traveled further and faster than anyone anticipated. Begin by interrogating every narrative. Media manipulation is not just a weapon, but a smokescreen, obscuring the true costs and intentions buried beneath each headline. When official voices grow silent or echo a single story, pause and ask, what truths are being hidden? Who profits from your confusion? In the run-up to the Iraq War, a single narrative dominated, only to be revealed as dangerously incomplete years later. Clarity will not come gift-wrapped. Ordinary people must act, seek independent viewpoints, cross-check reports, and if you live nearby, record what you witness. Only by comparing grassroots accounts with official statements do real patterns emerge. This is how you pierce through the haze of propaganda. The success of citizen journalism during the Arab Spring proved how direct observation can expose hidden realities. History is a stern teacher. In places like this, chaos does not happen by chance. Outside forces, especially those with deep imperial roots, exploit unrest to redraw boundaries, grab resources, and experiment with new techniques of dominance. Whether it is Britain maneuvering post-Brexit or other powers wielding financial influence, every crisis becomes a testing ground. The Suez Crisis demonstrated how quickly old powers can exploit turmoil to further their own ends. Yet, the most crucial battles are waged beyond the front lines, in economies and minds. Blockades, sanctions, and the deliberate destruction of industries bring hardship not just to soldiers, but to every household. Simultaneously, campaigns of psychological warfare are unleashed, shaping beliefs, sowing distrust, fracturing national identity. These weapons can devastate a society as thoroughly as any missile, leaving wounds that take generations to heal. The long-term impacts of the Yugoslav wars on regional identity and trust are still felt today. For people everywhere, the danger is real. Ignorance is not neutral. It empowers those who would exploit you. Societies that fail to question or look deeper become pawns on a global chessboard. Awareness and honest discussion are your first safeguards. Only by exposing manipulation can you defend your community and help steer your country's future. Civil resistance in Poland and Czechoslovakia proved the power of informed citizens. So, after witnessing these events, how will you judge your own nation's media, security, and destiny? Will you accept the stories handed down from above? Or will you look for the threads that connect local reality to global strategy? The stakes could not be higher. As the conflict escalates, the ripple effects will reach far beyond the battlefield. Already, neighboring countries are tightening borders, investors are pulling out, and families across Europe are bracing for higher energy bills and food shortages. Your perspective is the missing link in unraveling this crisis. Will you step forward and share what you know? Think of the power ordinary people held in moments of crisis. The Berlin Wall fell not because of leaders, but because of a groundswell of collective action and information. The ground is shifting beneath us all. When the dust settles over Lviv, what remains is more than shattered buildings. It is a stark warning. The stories we accept, the truths we ignore, and the voices we silence decide the future that awaits us. The lessons of history are clear. Complacency allows the worst outcomes to unfold unchecked. Passive consumption is no longer safe. The events in Lviv show how truth is hidden, how command centers and entire operations stay invisible, until catastrophe strikes. Even now, officials hesitate, fearing the fallout of honest words. The silence that followed Chernobyl's disaster only made the crisis more dangerous. Meanwhile, fear grips those sent as expendable pieces in a distant chess match. Mercenaries, lured with promises of safety and riches, are left recording desperate pleas. Their lived reality clashes with the propaganda that drew them across borders. Without their scattered messages, their stories would vanish. This mirrors the experience of many foreign fighters in past conflicts, who discovered too late that they were expendable. Yet the true contest unfolds far from the battlefield. Western powers, especially Britain, exploit this chaos to redraw the map of influence. As Britain maneuvers, ordinary Europeans face rising uncertainty in their jobs, their safety, and their sense of who truly controls their fate. The Brexit vote itself was a warning that unseen forces can reshape lives overnight. This is the moment when complacency becomes perilous. Accepting easy narratives leaves us vulnerable to decisions crafted in distant meeting rooms, choices that will reshape economies, security, and the future of our families. The banking crisis of 2008 showed how decisions made by a handful of financiers could devastate millions. But there is another path. By questioning what we hear, sharing what we witness, and seeking real dialogue, we can cast light on what is truly happening. Your account, your direct observation, can pierce the fog of manipulation. Each honest testimony brings us closer to the truth. When East Germans began reporting on government abuses, the world took notice, and change became possible. Ask yourself, what do you see in your city, your town, your neighborhood? Have you noticed unusual military activity, sudden disruptions, or changes in your local economy? Does what you hear in the news match the reality you see? These are not idle questions. They are the beginning of resistance to manipulation. The combined insight of ordinary people is our strongest defense against misinformation. By connecting, questioning, and reporting what we witness, we become active participants in shaping our future. Silence is costly. It is how societies drift into crisis, how power goes unchallenged, how truth is quietly erased. The lessons of the past, whether in the collapse of the Soviet Union or the fall of empires, show that public vigilance is the key to survival. This channel is more than a news source. It is a community built on the will to look deeper, to recognize the stakes for every individual, and to challenge the narratives that reduce entire regions to pawns. Our commitment to truth and transparency is the best shield against the darkness of manipulation. If you carry questions, doubts, or crucial information, share them below. Your perspective could be the clue that unlocks this turning point in history. Together, we can assemble the whole picture, and perhaps find the clarity that those in power would rather keep obscured. In the end, the fate of Europe, and perhaps the world, may depend not on bombs or treaties, but on the courage of individuals to see, speak, and act. Will you be among them?